another episode of Tap Outs and Touchdowns.
What's up, Bill?
What's going on, man?
Oh, nothing. I don't know. It's something about this song that always gets me amped, and I'm just waiting for the day that somebody comes for me for playing it. But until then, I'm going to keep rocking with it. That's right, everybody. If you're just tuning in with us, it is another football episode of Tap Outs and Touchdowns. As always, it's your guy, Bully Rye, alongside banker Bill. Bill, the UFL season is winding down. And we're gonna get into all that stuff, but before then, we've got some interesting topics to get into before we get into UFL Week 8 talk. And you know what comes first in the show, Bill, is my favorite segment of the show, and it's Homer's Corner. Bill, would you like to start us off on Homer's Corner this week?
Yeah, I mean, I just realized you sent me the notes before the show, and I just realized you and I are both talking about lawsuits today.
It's phenomenal.
I didn't even think about it. Okay, so mine is Jaden Rashada. He is was a recruit out of high school last year, going to college. Last year was his freshman season. He was originally committed to go to the University of Miami. Then through NIL promises and whatnot, Florida got him to flip. He officially never. I don't think he ever actually signed with the University of Florida. He did not sign his letter of intent. There's a lot of story to go on here, but he is now suing Florida head coach Billy Napier and the University of Florida and another Florida staffer over basically fraudulent claims made against him and being paid NIL money to sign with the University of Florida. And the way that this goes is he had originally signed with the University of Miami or committed to the University of Miami, and he was being promised $9.5 million from the University of Miami. Florida, obviously, even though players verbally commit, a lot of the schools, that's why you hear about flipping before signing day, that kind of stuff. Florida continued to pursue him, and there was a collective, a booster that went to Jaden Rashada and said, "Hey, I'll get you anything if you'll go to Florida." And so it ended up being that he was going to get $11.5 million to go to Florida. He flipped his commitment, and then the money swelled to $13.85 million, I think, through a booster and what they called it was a Gator collective of money, basically, for NIL. There was some things going on. It was very odd. They paid him $150,000 to flip the commitment, was what he got right there, like a signing bonus. And then they told him, apparently there was a phone call between Coach Billy Napier and Jaden Rashada and his father, Jaden Rashada's father, that if he signed the letter of intent, they were going to give him $1 million. I think actually he did end up signing that letter of intent and didn't get any money. At some point, it sounds like somebody realized this was a terrible idea to be spending all this money on this guy, and we have no idea how good he's going to be, and we're not going to do this. And so Florida basically said, we're not doing this. So a month later, Jaden Rashada got a letter from the collective that had originally was going to pay him the money and said, we're backing out of the deal. There's no contract. We're done. And Jaden Rashada obviously got upset, ended up signing with Arizona State and got almost next to nothing. People were still saying, hey, this guy should have still signed with Florida because they were still saying that, there was going to be NIL money happening, blah, blah, blah. He was upset because the collective backed out and he went to Arizona State. Well, he stunk at Arizona State. He started 3 games. He won his first game and lost the next 2 and got benched as a true freshman. Get it? That's not what he's going to be. Hopefully he ends up somewhere else. But he did go somewhere else. He is now also transferred to the University of Georgia. And next season, he's supposed to be backing up Carson Beck at the University of Georgia. So this kid is now up to 4 schools in 1 year. Now he's decided he's going to sue the University of Florida for all the things that he was told. And this is a clown show, Ryan. It's a clown show. He's probably not going to win. A lot of people going, if he wins this, every attorney, every lawyer in the United States is now going to find some kid that was promised something and didn't get it from a school, when he signed without a contract. Like there was no actual real contract signed. But there were promises, and there's probably text messages, emails, things like that went back and forth, but nothing actually ever signed. So who knows what's going to happen because college football makes zero sense at this point. But kind of, I mean, this is the state we're in. And I watched a bit of a podcast, and it's a podcast that airs daily from 2 to 6. I don't remember what the name of the podcast is, but they're on daily. And I just caught a snippet of them talking about this situation. The podcast was the main guy was like, I'm done with college football. Now, you and I talked about it last week about people being done with sports. All right. That was the NFL. Mm-hmm. This was a guy that was saying that he is absolutely done with college football. He doesn't care anymore. And then the other guy that he made explain this whole situation, because he's like, he read the story and then he's like, explain to me what's going on. Explain to everybody what's going on. The other guy was like, you know what? This is almost to the point where I don't know if I'm going to care in the fall because this is a joke. Their issue was you now have to buy. You're a huge. The one guy was a Michigan State fan. He said, you're a Michigan State fan. He goes, do you have any idea who the players are that are going to be on the roster when they play their first game? The guy's like, nah, I have no clue. You don't know. Mm-hmm. Transferred, they transfer in, they transfer out. Who knows who's left on the team until you buy a program and suddenly that's the guys you're supposed to root for. There is zero commitment to college football anymore from any of these players. They just go where they want. They go where the money is. And the one guy, so the other guy's out already. He was like, I'm done. And the other guy said, this is equating to me baseball in 1994. When they pulled the plug on the season, he said, before baseball was like my favorite sport. It was my thing. I watched it out constantly. He said, and in 1994, the players said, we're out, we're locking everything down. And well, the owners did. And they just pulled the plug on the season. Season was over. He said, I've never loved baseball. He goes, I don't even watch baseball anymore. He goes, it was my favorite sport prior to that. He said, this is starting to feel like that to me. He said, I cannot get behind any of these teams, any of these players. I have no idea who they are. And at what point are people just going to check out? How do you feel about that?
I mean, listen, you mentioned the fact that you don't know who's going to be on the team until you buy a program. A lot of teams don't put out programs anymore. Yeah. When COVID hit, they didn't want to hand stuff out, so they stopped producing it. And they realized they saved a ton of money. And so you can't go to the University of South Carolina football games where I have a collection of programs dating back to the 1930s and the 1940s, and you can't go buy a program on campus anymore.
Right.
So yeah, it's a matter of having to keep up with websites now to keep up with who's on the team.
Rosters.
Listen, I think we knew at some point this was going to happen, that somebody was going to be promised some money that didn't get it, and they were going to try to get reciprocation for it. We've talked about it at length on this show, Bill, that NIL and the transfer portal without regulation is ruining college sports. And this is just another prime example. It's even the atmosphere in stadiums doesn't feel like college football anymore. We talked about this at the South Carolina Florida game last year, that instead of listening to the band play in between plays, there was a DJ in the stadium, and they were playing popular music during the games. I don't think I'm ever going to stop watching college football unless, say, South Carolina stops having a program, or if something really crazy comes out. Like it would be hard for me to continue to watch the WWE knowing what their former owner and chairman was doing if he was still at the helm. I couldn't support that. If something crazy like that happened within the world of college football, outside of like what happened at Penn State, outside of what happened at Baylor, if there was a huge scandal that came out about college football hiding something really, really reckless, I don't think I'm ever going to stop watching college football. But I will sort of yearn for the days when it felt like more like amateur football. What do they call the traditionalists, if you will?
I'm a traditionalist.
Which is unfortunate because so as the game grows, things are going to change. And so, unfortunately, the days of Jefferson Pilot and the only way you got to watch a game is if you went to the stadium. Nowadays, I think I read an article. I don't know if this is true. Maybe it's a meme, but something along the lines of, as far as the NFL goes, it's cheaper to go watch Carolina Panthers games in Charlotte than it is to watch games on TV, because you have to have all these different subscription services to watch every single game. So getting back to college football here, listen, I'm with you. I don't think Jaden Rashada is going to win this case. Once you mentioned it and I forgot about it when you started talking about it, oh yeah, I remember reading about this earlier this week. This isn't going to be the only time it happens. Mm-hmm. The only way that they are going to curb something like this from happening is by regulating NIL. And the NCAA cannot regulate NIL. And we've talked about it weeks ago on the show that at some point they are going to have to put something in place, whether they break away the big conferences and create one super conference with subdivisions, so that now college football can govern their own teams, their own schools, and govern themselves. Can they regulate NIL? Until then, it's going to be the Wild West. The crazy thing is, Bill, is that this stuff has been going on for decades.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Teams have been doing a really good job of hiding it, and now it's coming to light. Now we're getting to see it. And Jaden Rashada's got some big ones to try to come out and sue the head coach of a college football team and the university because this joker thought he was going to get $13 million to go play for the University of Florida.
Like, do you want a kicker?
Do
you want a kicker here? Not to interrupt you. I know. Do you want a kicker? Here's the kicker. He's currently playing for the Georgia Bulldogs. He is on that roster. He went to Kirby Smart and told him that he was going to announce that he is going to be suing Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. And Kirby Smart gave him his blessing.
It's more bad publicity for Florida, good publicity for Georgia. It's a game. Volley Polly in the chat here over on Facebook says no more death penalties. You're absolutely right. The day of the death penalty is over. SMU will never have to worry about it. Miami, you talked about Miami a second ago. Miami got away with murder.
Oh, yeah.
And never, they got a slap in the wrist back. Yeah. So listen, it is what it is. I'm yes. To simplify it, yes, I am upset about what's going on. I do miss college football the way that I watched it with my dad. But like all things, I mean, the NBA is closing in on TV contracts with ESPN, NBC, and otherwise. So that's going to look different for us very soon. So
no, it's not because I don't watch it.
Fair. NBA fans, it'll
not going to see any difference for me. Yeah.
Well, I take your Jaden Rashada lawsuit, and I raise you Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. was sued by Fanatics. This is an article on NFL.com. This is direct quotes. Let's see, published May 19th. It just says Associated Press. It doesn't give a name at the top of the article. Fanatics has filed a lawsuit against Arizona Cardinals rookie receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. alleging breach of contract. They claimed that Harrison did not fulfill his obligations and estimated the damages in millions of dollars. He signed a contract, and now I'm sort of paraphrasing. He signed a contract with Fanatics while he was at Ohio State and refused to sign the NFL Players Association's group licensing. And there's been a lot of back and forth. We've talked about it on the show. I found something on a website called Awful Announcing that ties Pat McAfee to this, because Matt McAfee back on May 1st basically alleged that there was no contract with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Fanatics. Marvin Harrison Jr. being currently represented by his father, former Colts wide receiver Marvin Harrison Sr. And this is a direct quote. Fanatics is allegedly telling some folks they have a deal. They don't have a deal with Marvin, said McAfee on May 1st, telling other people not to work with him, essentially saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have a contract. He was trying to leverage a deal that he didn't have in place with Fanatics to go somewhere else. He had a contract in place to sign autographs and apparel and all that stuff. And I don't know what to make of this, Bill. I've also seen a little bit of him in training camp. And it's kind of one of those things where if an NFL running back holds out for a contract at the beginning of the year, he's probably not going to have a great season. I said it pre-draft that I thought this guy was a prima donna. I thought he was a diva. And it has done, and through here in May, he has still not done anything to prove to me otherwise. I don't expect him to have this crazy great season for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think he comes within a top 10 of offensive rookies of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets banged up early and doesn't really recover throughout his rookie season. And I don't know. This is a bad look for a guy who, again, we talked about it on the show, didn't participate in the NFL Combine, didn't participate in a pro day, didn't do this, didn't do that, and now he's in the midst of a lawsuit scandal with Fanatics. It's just insane to me. Bill, what's your take on Marvin Harrison Jr. and what does this mean for him going forward?
I mean, I feel like this one's over my head a little bit. This is all. I mean, Ryan, this is terrifying what we're dealing with right now. These are college kids that have not played it down in the NFL. They are as young as can be. I mean, you remember being 21, 22 years old. I barely do. Yeah, I don't know if I really, but I mean, just the stuff that your life is completely different than what we're talking about right now. We see it a completely different way. We see it in a more, and I hate to even say it, we're more mature. I never thought I'd get there, but I think that's where we're, obviously that's where we're at, right? The people that are responsible for guiding these individuals, these kids that, their whole life is in front of them. The decisions they're making now could make or break their careers, can make or break their livelihoods, their, whatever. Just so these are huge life decisions for these people. And before we had the NCAA, and it felt like the NCAA was here to protect us, and something happened. We got lost along the way. This is not good. I don't know. We just talked about two different stories that are absolutely crazy. They're crazy. And they only happened because 4 years ago, when COVID happened, they just took they pushed all the walls down, and they did everything that hey, you want this? Fine, have it. You want this? Fine, have it. And now, I mean, we hated the walls, and I'm like, please bring them back. I mean, we need the walls.
Put them back up.
I know. We hated the walls. These kids should be paid. They should be able to sign contracts with or in this case, you're saying it's a fake contract. They should be able to sign contracts with endorsements. The kids worth money. They're making the TV channels money. They're making the networks money. They're making the schools money. They're doing all this stuff for these people, and all they're getting is an education if they get it. And now it's just. You ask me what I think. I think it's a disaster. It's a disaster. All of it is. And where are we going? We're not. Are we going to get back? Can we get it back? I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. There's a long comment on Facebook that I can't put on the chat because it's so long from Mike Tackett. I'll put what I can on the screen here. It covers both of our faces up, so you can see it here on the feed. But I'm gonna read it out with guys like Jim Tomsula, Norm Chow, Joe Thomas, John Gruden, Jim Herman, Alejandro Villanueva, and Tyreek Hill, all working with the European leagues of football. Are they a league that doesn't get its flowers? I guess that's kind of off topic what we're talking about. A 17-team league entering a year 4 this weekend, averaging 18 to 30,000 fans a week. Their championship last year had 50,000 fans. They've reincarnated most of NFL Europe team names with the blessings of the NFL while adding top European teams. That's a better stability than the UFL and every spring league here in the U.S. in 40 years. And I would say they're neck and neck with the CFL, yet we aren't talking about them enough. Why is that? It's a good question because I hadn't heard about them until just now. I know it's not on topic of what we've been talking about.
This must be why Tyreek is in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, not now. So he was in Europe, but he had been over in Spain or something.
Well, Mike Tackett, it's a great question. And I wish I was more prepared to answer your question, but this is going to be some research that we might have to come and talk about next week on this show.
I know why. Of course we know why. Because it's not going to make anybody any money. That's why we don't talk about it, because we don't get the media coverage of it, because it's not going to make anybody any money. Everything's tied to money. Follow the money. That's why you talk about it, why you don't. And the UFL is getting some play right now because there are people with a lot of money. They're involved in it. And if not, like last year when they bailed, I thought that's why. Okay, so Mike says that's why Tyreek was in Europe. Okay, I wondered what was going on because they didn't talk about it. We know nothing about it because they don't talk about it over here because there's not enough money to be made talking about that league, which sounds fantastic. And now I'll probably try to figure out what's going on over there. I really liked NFL Europe. I like the World League. That was fun. I was a Sacramento Surge fan. I don't know why, because it looked like the Dolphins a little bit. Anyway, this whole thing, I mean, it's money. That's why we don't talk about that. But back to the college football thing, Ryan. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know what we're going to do? You and I are going to talk about the college football game from EA coming out tonight because we can be our own commissioners and we'll kill NIL if we want to. It's gone. It's gone. No more of that. No more transfer.
We just talked about
that door.
Exactly. We just talked about how we've matured, and then we're going to talk about the video game that is coming out on July 19th. Listen, this is something that we've been really excited about. We talked about like the different things that are ruining college football. Well, part of the pageantry of college football for so many years was their NCAA football game put out by EA Sports. The last game put out was NCAA 14 back in 2013, so over a decade ago. And it was pulled, and they decided not to make any more college football games thanks to the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit for breach of using name, image, and likeness without permission to do so. And so rather than fight it, they just stopped making the game. And as we've seen the walls fall down and NIL become a thing, EA Sports decided to come back with college football this year, being released July 19th. Like I said, the first video game since NCAA 14. All 134 teams in the FBS will be available at launch, but it says that the 128 FCS teams will not be included, but it does not say that they won't be like available, let's say in DLC or something like that. It is, it's worth mentioning that the Heisman Trophy will also be on this game, but the other major awards like the Benderek, the Ray Guy, the Blitnikoff. What I say, Benderek?
Benderek.
You know what I was trying to say.
Used to be my name. I was
but they won't be. Yeah, but they won't be in the game because they couldn't come to a licensing agreement with that subcommittee. It said to add multiple commentary teams. There's a lot of notes that I don't want to go through all of them, but there's some notes that were released by, it looks like, some Reddit posters. A lot of new animations. It's considered the first next gen console football game, meaning that the Madden games have sort of been living off of the old PS4, the old Xbox One engines, and it looks like they've created something new here.
I call BS on that one. I call BS. There's no way EA came up with something new. No way. It's not what they do.
We shall see. They bringing back Team Builder, which you can go online and create your own fantasy teams with your own players. Like we can create a tap outs and touchdowns team where Banker Bill's the running back, I'm the quarterback, or vice versa. We can add all the listeners to it. So that's coming back. Full gameplay footage will be coming early next month, and there are 3 different versions of the game. One MVP bundle that also gives you Madden for $150. You can get early access for as little as $100, or you could buy the base game, which is about $70-$80. Bill, we have not talked about this on the show, but this has been something that we have been hyped for a very, very long time because this was teased to us over 2 years ago. What are you looking forward to most with college football 2025?
That's a good question, Ryan. I like that question. What am I looking forward to most? Let's put aside the fact that college football is a complete disaster and I won't know the Florida Gators roster. That actually will be my first time probably seeing it. I mean, I know who they have signed here recently in the transfer portal and all that stuff. They've and had a really good recruiting class, but this will be the first time I get to see these players. I think what I'm looking forward to most is the possibility, since you and I have both not bought Madden in how many years? We're gamers, and we're gamers. It's safe to say we're gamers, right? You and I are playing NHL 24 currently nightly.
I was gonna say I don't consider myself a big gamer.
Sports gamer.
I just play games every night before I go to bed. I'm not a big gamer, but I do play every day.
Whatever. Yeah. So we've been playing NHL 24, which we also did not pay for. We do the EA Pass, which gets us those games later in the season for free. Anyway, we don't pay for Madden anymore, right? I haven't paid for Madden since I think Madden 19 because it's the same game every year, and why bother buying the new game? So what am I looking forward to? I truly hope what you just said is actually the case. And I hope that they actually did some real coding this time and built a game. Do I believe they did? No. That's not what EA does. EA goes with a skeleton crew of developers just to change badges and put code in from 5 years ago so people forgot what Madden played like in 2017. That's what they do. They've been accused of it for years. They say, no, we don't. And then people point out there was a couple of years ago, I think it was in Madden 20, maybe Madden 21, where they forgot to take out some of the logos of Madden 20. And so when you bought Madden 21, some of like the practice field logos still said Madden 20. So they've been busted. Everybody knows it's what they do. And there's a lot of people that have stopped buying the game for that reason. So what I hope for is it's a different experience. It feels different. I didn't like Madden this year. So I hope it's not just a rebadge.
Obviously.
Yeah. yeah, I hope that it's brand new, and I hope that it looks and plays better. And I mean, I like to play sports games. That's what I play, and racing and sports games. And I hope it's good. I hope it's good because Madden was terrible, and I won't play it.
They did mention somewhere in this list that I should mention back in NCAA 14, zone read, which is what a lot of college offenses run through, was a big part of NCAA 14. It shows in these notes that I believe that is going to be the case again, that the game is going to play faster than Madden, that the zone read will get its own feature in this game. You'll be able to customize in your dynasty the number of teams in your college football playoff, customize playbooks. ESPN doesn't have full licensing because it's not going to be the ESPN ticker that goes across the bottom of the screen. So some room to improve before we've even seen the game. But I think I'm just most excited the fact that I can play South Carolina football again, and I'll actually be able to see South Carolina win a national championship. Like I did over 10 years ago.
Not in my league.
Not in your league. Listen. So to peek behind the curtain, not that anybody really cares about video games, and we're running late, so we got to wrap this up. But so we have Madden leagues where we play with a bunch of people online. I never run my own offline Madden league just playing the computer because it's not as fun. I like playing with my friends. College football, I will have my own offline dynasty mode where I can keep running my games while I'm waiting for everybody else to play. It'll screw me up when it comes to recruiting, but I don't care. That's how much I love playing college football. And so I'm really excited about that. More to come. Obviously, we've got 2 months before this game launches. And so if there's anything that you guys want to talk about with this game, hit us up on social media, X, Facebook. What's the other? Oh, we're on YouTube. So if you're in the YouTube and you want to enter the chat, feel free to. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram and hit me up there and talk about it there. I do want to mention a comment from Volley Polly. We'll talk about this later in the show in overtime. Volley Polly wants to know why there has been no mention of my stand-up from last week yet. So it's coming. It'll be in the overtime segment of the show. We'll talk a little bit about that. It was great. You shut your dirty mouth. I almost said another bad word on here, just about as bad as the words that I used in my stand-up. Not safe for work.
With all due respect, Brian, I don't care.
That's fantastic. Nice callback. All right. We'll touch one NFL story real quick. NFL.com columnist Jeffrey Chadla, I'm hoping I'm getting that right, listed the 7 teams that can knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. Miami Dolphins were not on that list, Bill. The list goes in order from 1 to 7. The 49ers, the Ravens, the Lions, the Bengals, the Eagles, the Bills, and the Texans. Of those 7 teams, which do you think has the most realistic chance of knocking off Kansas City from the top of the pyramid?
I actually wasn't listening because that guy lost all credibility with me after not putting the Dolphins in that list of 7.
It's funny. It's good. It's good. I mean, he's better than the Pro Football Network. This guy also has the Houston Texans at 7, which is hilarious to me. So I'm not disagreeing with you. The fact that he's got the Texans in over the Dolphins.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a CJ Stroud versus Mac Jones rookie season comparison and completely blow your mind when you see the stat category, like the statistics next to each other. We're going to do this. I'm going to do this. That's going to be my homework corner. Remind me, Ryan, because everybody loves the Texans
for next week's show.
Everybody loves the Texans, and it's because CJ Stroud was this amazing rookie quarterback. Well, guess what? He wasn't. If he was, so was Mac Jones, who just got trashed by the New England Patriots. Anyway, if I was going to bet on a team, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, if there was, of these 7 teams, I know the Dolphins aren't on here, but of these 7 teams, who do you think has the best chance? All things considered, health-wise and everything else, of these 7 teams, who do you think has the best shot to knock off Kansas City?
The Detroit Lions.
I love it.
I'm not saying that because you're a Detroit Lions fan, but if I was going to bet on a team to beat Kansas City this next season, with all things that happen in the offseason, and we haven't seen the teams yet, and we don't know what kind of injuries we're going to get, but if you're going to take it to the team that almost, and like I said, I've said it multiple times on the show, they almost beat San Francisco. I feel like they should have beat San Francisco. Their one weakness was cornerback, and they have absolutely tried to fix that. And now I think the NFL, I think ESPN.com said that the best fit for Stephon Gilmore right now is Detroit. If that were to happen, even before that happens, let's say it doesn't, whatever. They've really, really tried to fix their secondary. I think that fixes that team. Everything else is still good. They beat San Francisco, and I think if they had beaten San Francisco in the NFC Championship, they were a better matchup and would have beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So
I agree. Not me being a homer, I think the Lions last year, because they beat them in week 1, albeit without Justin Houston and without Travis Kelce. I think the Lions could have won the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
So nevertheless, that's your NFL story. We got 30 minutes to talk UFL, and we've got a lot to get to because the UFL semifinal playoff games are all set as week 8 came to an end. I don't have it written in the ticker here, but I will tell you that the ratings for last weekend's games have been released. Memphis, Michigan, a game that meant nothing, pulled in 673,000 viewers. Houston, Birmingham, two of the Birmingham's not the worst team in the league. They're the best team in the league. But Houston being one of the worst teams in the league, it was on ESPN2 at like 7:30, 8:30 at night. Drew a whopping 254,000. I think it's the lowest game all season.
I was one of those. I watched that game.
I think I watched some of it too because Houston. We'll get into it in a second. Houston kept it close.
Yeah. You and I were talking about it, by the way. We were talking about it, and you were actually commenting like, "Oh, Houston did this." Yeah. It was very exciting.
Yeah. So we were of the 254,000. We were two of them. On Sunday, essentially the elimination game in the XFL conference, the XFL division. DC Defenders St. Louis game on ABC drew 1.1 million viewers. Arlington San Antonio finished with just over 500,000, 545,000 to be exact. So some decent viewership outside of the late Saturday night game, but that's to be expected with one of the worst teams in the league, along with the undefeated team in the league on ESPN2 on a Saturday night. People got other stuff going on. So let's go ahead and get started with the first game of the weekend, and that's Memphis Showboats traveling to Michigan to take on the Panthers, and Memphis drops yet another game to fall to 1-7 on the season. Bill, I mean, I'm not sure really how much there is to talk about because Michigan's in the USFL championship game. Memphis is out, but it looked like they tried some new stuff. There was 2 quarterbacks that played for Memphis this weekend, but they just can't get the. I mean, they can't get the ball going on the ground. Dawood Davis might be a guy who can get on with an NFL team this coming off season, but no turnovers, 1 sack. Bill, what are your thoughts about the Memphis Showboats and how they looked here in week 8?
Honestly, they looked, I mean, this is a playoff team they're playing against, right? And this game was tied in the 4th quarter. So this might have been one of their better games that they played, honestly. Again, I don't think Michigan is all that good. But they're winning, and they're going to be in that playoff game, so that's important. And they need to get Perry back. I feel like he's the best quarterback that they've put on the field this season. So Memphis not so good, Michigan a little bit better, and it came down to that at the end. I don't know if you saw this, Ryan, but Michigan, there's been a lot of talk about next season and whether or not the UFL is going to be around. They've said yes, it's going to be around, and even possible expansion in 2 years. I heard that this week. That's kind of interesting, coming from real sources, not just people speculating. But I think they said they were going to add maybe 2 teams in 2 years, which is nice, and maybe Seattle will get their team back. But Michigan, they've said next year probably will not be in Detroit. They were talking about possibly Ann Arbor or East Lansing, like where one of the football schools are, where, either Michigan State or Michigan. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. Michigan obviously not going to be kicked out, and they actually acted like the source that I read, all the teams would say the same. They're not dumping a team yet. They're gonna keep it moving forward. So that's cool. Obviously, Michigan, pretty good team. Can they beat Birmingham? No. So I think that's why we're seeing this drop in ratings.
I mean, listen, when it comes to a team getting dropped, I think Memphis would be one of them because they can't put butts in the seats and they can't put wins on the scoreboard. But yeah, if you look over at Michigan, you talked about EJ Perry continues to be out. They play 2 quarterbacks in this game. Brian Lewerke from Michigan State. 6 for 11, 82 yards with a touchdown. And then Bryce Perkins played in the 2nd straight game. He had, where is it at? 106 yards and a touchdown. Matthew Colburn, man. Matter of fact, I think Volley Polly put it in the chat as well. Let Colburn cook. Matthew Colburn, the pride of Irmo, South Carolina, by way of Wake Forest. Another game, 24 carries, 93 yards. Not a great average, but he did find the end zone twice. So yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say about Michigan. The big news to come out of this game is the fact that Jake Bates, the star kicker out of Arkansas, missed his first kick at home in Michigan, missed a 51-yarder with 5:28 left to go in the third quarter. It was his only field goal attempt on the day, and he missed it. People were kind of concerned about leg fatigue for Jake Bates late in the season and then going into a potential NFL contract. Bill, you concerned with him missing a 51-yarder here?
No, come on.
I'm not either.
Come on, the dude's hit like 360 yarders. Let's not worry about him right now. You know what I will say though, Ryan? The reality is Jake Bates, even though we love this guy and because he's hit these bombs of a field goal, he's not even the best kicker in the UFL. The UFL's loaded with good kickers. It really. Have you looked at the statistics?
I mean, they're all making field goals because I don't think they kick many.
Well,
no, I say that there was one game
18. There are 3 players that have attempted 18 field goals. 2 of them, well, Jake Bates is, I guess, the tied for second in the league. Yeah. There's actually a guy for St. Louis named Andre Smits. He's 16 for 18, 88.9%. That's good in the NFL. Yeah, like Pete Stoyanovich was like the best kicker in Miami Dolphins history. I think his average was like 83%.
I mean, listen, if there's one thing that comes out of the UFL, kickers should be signed on to NFL teams in the offseason. Let's go to the next game on the docket here. We talked about it. Houston at Birmingham. Houston 35-28 losers against the number 1 team and the only undefeated team in the UFL in the Birmingham Stallions. Let's start off with Houston because they fall to 1-7. They were eliminated from the playoffs last week. Reed Snett and Nolan Henderson both get some playtime in this game. Nolan Henderson looked a little better as far as on the ground. But your guy, Mark Thompson out of Florida, gets 2 touchdowns in this game. A lot of playmakers here for Houston trying to keep it close, but ultimately can't pull up the upset. Any thoughts on the Houston Roughnecks and their, I would call it an impressive showing, albeit not very much viewed here in Week 8?
I mean, I think you got what you thought you were going to get in this game, except that Houston played better than we thought they would. I think this gives XFL fans, that'd be us, right? I think we're the XFL conferences. We don't even care who wins the XFL conference. We just want them to beat the Birmingham Stallions.
Yes.
That's all we're doing. I think that gives hope to some of the people that are rooting for the XFL teams. So, St. Louis and San Antonio, which one of those 2 comes out and plays in the championship game? Let's hope for St. Louis because that's going to be in their home house. But, Birmingham didn't look as unbeatable as they have in previous weeks against Houston because Houston has not looked very good against other teams. They got beat by DC. I mean, they're not that good. And to only lose by 7 when it was a high-scoring game, I think that gives a lot of hope for everybody else.
Shout out Andy Hunter in the chat. Wanted to come in and say hello. Let's
Andy?
go. Let's talk about Birmingham. They improved to 8-0 on the season. Adrian Martinez, the solidified starter at this point, 173 yards, 3 scores in this game. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, but you mentioned they didn't look all that beatable, they didn't look all that unbeatable in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, they're balanced on offense. I mean, you've got almost 200 passing yards. You've got Ricky Person Jr. with 63 yards on the ground. A bunch of different receivers contributing here. They'd never trailed in this game, albeit Houston keeping it close. Is it still at that point, Bill, where you think Birmingham is not beatable until we get to the championship?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to beat Birmingham all season long. The X factor in this whole thing is Adrian Martinez's legs. As long as he can continue to do what he does on the ground, where he's dangerous through the air. We've seen him throw for over 300 yards, and then he turns around and runs for 7.3 yards per carry because he's super fast. I mean, we talked about it earlier this season. He is the Lamar Jackson of the UFL, and Lamar Jackson won the MVP. And we're seeing that from Adrian, that type of play from Adrian Martinez where he can throw, and then if he can't throw, he runs and he gets 7 yards. So it's hard to stop this team, and I don't see them getting beat.
I'll tell you what's interesting is that their next 2 games to end the season are on the road at San Antonio, and then Week 10 hosting Michigan, who they will play the following week in the USFL championship game. Yeah. Volley Polly asked us a question earlier in the day on social media about who we thought the MVP was in this league. And the reason I bring it up is because Shannon Smith is in the chat saying that Martinez has to be the MVP, and I couldn't agree more. Bill, what say you?
I think so. I think he's the best. I mean, he's the best all-around player in the league right now. AJ McCarron has better stats, but he also played, they were playing with Matt Corral there for a couple games, or Martinez would be even better. I have to say it's probably going to be Martinez this year. And again, I think he's the X factor. I think he's the he's the guy that makes that team unbeatable. If Matt Corral is the quarterback of the Birmingham Stallions, they're not winning every game. But with Martinez, they are.
Well, you mentioned A.J. McCarron. He did not play this week, but his St. Louis Battlehawks did squeak out a win against the D.C. Defenders in what was essentially an elimination game for D.C. D.C. needed to either win this game and have San Antonio lose, or just win this game and hope for another week of eligibility. Spoiler alert, with the St. Louis win against D.C. and San Antonio getting a win, the D.C. Defenders, your XFL championship, I think it was the East Division last year, where they was it North South, whatever it was. They played for a spot in the XFL championship game last year. They will not be doing that this year as they fall on the road here. Bill, let's talk about DC as they fall to 3-5 on the season. Jordan Ta'amu, who was one of the stars of the XFL last year, has been struggling mightily. He did have 2 touchdowns and almost 200 yards passing, but had 2 interceptions in this game. We talk about not having balanced attacks, combined 89 yards on the ground on 17 carries as the team combined for 5.2 yards a carry. And Darius Hagans didn't look all that bad, but it looks like they are 40 pass attempts compared to 17 rushing attempts for DC. Like we talked about, Abram Smith last year for DC was this offense. And without somebody like Abram Smith, we see why DC is on the outside looking in at the playoffs this year. Obviously you're nodding your head in agreement. What are your thoughts on DC now that they're no longer in playoff contention?
We've been saying it every week. The offensive line stinks. Whatever happened between, whoever decided not to come back and play in the UFL versus the XFL last season, this offensive line has not been as good as it was last year. Last year, they were a dominant rushing team, whether it be Abram Smith or Ta'amu, who ran a lot last season. Yeah. And they had pretty good wide receivers. Ty Scott's looked pretty good for them. Their wide receivers don't seem to be the true problem with this team. They seem to have pretty decent players. But just when you see Ta'amu make mistakes, he's throwing a lot of interceptions. He's not able to run the ball. They're not able to run the ball. You got to blame that on the offensive line. I just feel like there's always pressure on Ta'amu. He throws the ball high because he's getting hit. He's been hurt multiple times this season. That didn't happen last year. So he's just getting hit too much. It's too much pressure, not enough running, not enough offensive line for DC.
They did get to the quarterback 4 times in this game, but we should mention that the quarterback, again, was not A.J. McCarron. Did not play with an injury in this game. They improved to 6-2 due to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Manny Wilkins, quarterback out of Arizona State, gets the start here. 9 for 18, 126 yards. He also had 79 yards on the ground, showing some versatility here from the quarterback spot to sort of fill in while A.J. McCarron misses time. Listen, Jacob Sailors didn't look great in this game, but Wayne Gallman comes in and finds 2 touchdowns in this game for St. Louis. Again, it's the exact opposite. It's the tale of two teams. One team can't run the ball. The other team is doing everything they can to do it. 19 carries between these 2 running backs, 17 total for the DC Defenders. And then, it's just it is what it is. St. Louis now, with the win, they are still tied. We're going to get there in a second. They're still tied with San Antonio at 6-2. So we do not know who's going to be the 1 seed in the XFL division at this point. Bill, are you concerned with the idea that A.J. McCarron might not be available until the playoff game in 3 weeks?
No. I mean, you'd rather... No. Manny Wilkins actually wasn't a great passer in that game, but he can run. Dude can run. And he was getting killed. I'm like, dude, you're the backup quarterback. Don't get hurt, right? He was just diving, and it was all over the place. So I'm like, he's going to get hurt. He didn't, thank goodness. Am I concerned that McCarron's out? No, I think it's... We don't know which Quentin Dormady we're going to get because we got a different one this week, and we haven't gotten to that yet. But, I think St. Louis is a better team than any team they're going to end up playing. And so I think whoever the quarterback is, whether it be Wilkins, who is not as good an option as McCarron, obviously, I think it's more important that St. Louis, if they are able to get to the playoffs, they beat San Antonio. Oh, they're already in the playoffs, but I'm just saying if they're home or on the road, depending on which team wins the division. that they beat San Antonio and they get McCarron back for that championship game, because that's going to give them the best chance, obviously, to beat what we expect to be Birmingham in that game.
Well, you mentioned which Quentin Dormady we're going to get for the San Antonio Brahmas. We got a decent Quentin Dormady this week.
Yeah.
As the San Antonio Brahmas knock off. They beat the Arlington Renegades 20-15. Arlington coming off their only win of the season a week ago, where they dropped 40 points, and they made this game interesting, but ultimately fall short yet again. It's hard to say that Adrian Martinez is the MVP of the UFL when Luis Perez, for the most part, all season has led in quarterback category, in every quarterback statistical category there is. But Arlington is just so bad as a team. He had 209 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Devion Smith averaged 3.8 yards on the ground. Sal Cannella, another big day, 9 catches, 87 yards. Defense finished with 3 sacks, but they trailed late by 5 with under 2 minutes to play. They scored to bring the game within 5. Could not convert the 4th and 12 onside kick attempt, thus allowing San Antonio to run out the clock. I think the one thing that I can say for the Arlington Renegades, despite the fact that they are 1-7, tied to be one of the bottom 3 teams in the UFL, is that they don't quit. Bill, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, fair. I mean, San Antonio scored enough points to win this game in the first half. That's what they did. They put up 20 in the first half. Everybody's like, oh, what a terrible game, 20-3, and ends up 20-15. I don't know what happened in the second half, why things changed for them, but Dormady's still putting up points. But yeah, Arlington they're crazy, man. What a weird team. What a weird that doesn't make sense in football, right? When the team that's absolutely terrible. What are they, 1-7? And their quarterback is maybe the best quarterback in the league. That makes 0 sense when you say that out loud. And that's what you got in Arlington. We called them a statistical anomaly last week, and they proved it again this week. As you see a decent game out of Luis Perez. You talked about all the accolades that, hey, they got to the quarterback, they did this, they did that, they lose the game.
Yeah. Well, you talked about San Antonio. There's actually a fun stat before we get to that, because we obviously know that San Antonio will be playing St. Louis for the XFL Division Championship. And volleyball brings up another good point. We find out who the 1 seed is when they play each other in Week 10 in the Battle Dome. That's going to be fun to watch. But I digress. Let's look at San Antonio. Quentin Dormady, 320 yards through the air with 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, man. It's like you said, what Quentin Dormady are we going to get?
You don't know.
And So here's the other one that we need to talk about. And this is a guy that I was very high on going into the season when we did our primer episode. Sure. He's not played in quite a few weeks, but Anthony McFarland wasn't effective on the ground, averaged 2 yards a carry, but he had 3 catches for 118 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Of those 118 yards, 113 of those yards were yards after catch. I mean, this dude is explosive when he gets in the open field, and he showed it. And I think, honestly, if he can stay healthy, we don't even have to talk about Cody Latimer, who had 116 yards through the air as a wide receiving option. If they can keep Anthony McFarland on the field, I don't care if you're Quentin Dormady. I don't care if I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter what quarterback you have. If Anthony McFarland continues to be that playmaker, San Antonio's got a shot to play for the UFL championship. Bill, what'd you like seeing out of San Antonio and Quentin Dormady now sitting at 6-2 on the season?
I like that assessment. McFarland is, and we talked about it early in the season when we saw him. You talked about him in the primer. I didn't really know much about him. You were excited about him. First couple games, look at this guy gets hurt, right? So now he's back. And they were, beginning of the season, we thought San Antonio was definitely a team that was going to play I don't want to say the championship, but they're in the playoffs, right? So that's good. They've been able to find a way to make it through after losing their starting quarterback, after losing their starting running back. Here they are. They're in the playoffs. I like a lot of players on that team. I like seeing it. Vamos Brahmas, man. I've been saying that all year. You've got Latimer, who was by far the best player on Orlando last season in the XFL. Jontre Kirkland, we love that guy. Right? I mean, and I love Dormady. I thought Dormady was going to be a good player. He's not. And then you got McFarland that you really like. So, they've got players, man. I think if they put it together, they can beat teams. I think they could beat St. Louis. It's going to be really fun to go down the stretch. Looks like they're going to play each other twice. So this is going to be really crazy how this schedule has worked out and how this is going to end up kind of going through the playoffs. I wonder what some of these games are going to start look like ratings wise. If people are paying attention to who's playing who and what games are important, if it's not just hey, football's on, it's 1:00 on a Saturday, football's on, whatever. I think this week was the early game on Sunday was the high rated game, but
Yes.
it's going to be interesting to see if people are actually like, ooh, the Brahmas are playing the Battlehawks. I got to watch this. This is going to be an interesting game because these are two good teams.
It's interesting again to note. Polly mentioned it a second ago about San Antonio playing St. Louis in Week 10, but Michigan plays Birmingham in Week 10.
Exactly.
We get the playoff teams playing each other in back-to-back weekends.
They screwed that up. They're probably going, why did we do this? Yeah, this is awful.
Well,
it's weird. It's really weird.
In fairness, who would have guessed, especially with the way that DC played last year and the fact that Arlington was the reigning XFL champions, that Week 10 rematch between Arlington and DC was a rematch of last year's East Division championship, whatever the case was. So, yeah, I think the scheduling, I don't think they expected the schedule to pan out where here in Week 8, the playoffs are set with 2 weeks to go, and you're going to get the same teams playing each other in back-to-back weekends to finish the season going into the UFL championship.
Do you think they're kicking each other? Do you think they're kicking themselves for that? I mean, it's...
How do you avoid that, though? Because you don't know.
You can't avoid it. I mean, it's just, it's happenstance. It comes down to, we didn't know what teams were going to do. Nobody knew what teams were going to be good. Maybe Birmingham, because Birmingham kept a lot of their players, and they were fantastic last year, obviously, but they didn't have a quarterback. We went into the season not knowing how their quarterbacks were going to play. Their quarterback is playing for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a conundrum. Like, I don't know how you fix it. Last year we talked about the fact,
man. It's going to be wild.
Last year we talked about the fact that the best 4 teams didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah,
because Seattle was better than Arlington, but because of the way the divisions were set up, they didn't make it. So now you look at the fact that they are the 4 best teams in the UFL. If you're looking at the ticker going across the stream, the league standings going across. St. Louis and San Antonio both 6-2. You look at the USFL, Birmingham's 8-0, Michigan's 6-2. There's nobody close to them. And so I don't know if they just didn't expect it. I don't know how you fix it. Outside of putting a week in between the final week of the regular season and the first week of playoffs, but then you lose viewers because it's not fresh on your mind. You get a week off to think about it. And it's not like ESPN. It's not like Fox. It's not like CBS. None of the big networks are covering these games when they're not on TV. Like, you can't turn on SportsCenter and watch UFL highlights. And if you can, it's very brief, and they zip through it to get back to talking about NBA and NHL playoffs. So, yeah, I don't know how you fix it, but I also don't think you anticipated this happening. So it'll be interesting to see. You talked about viewership. You wonder if Week 10, nobody's going to care because it doesn't matter until, let's call it Week 11, when the playoffs hit. That's when it matters, when these 2 teams play each other. Or when these 4 teams play each other, I should say.
Let me figure this out. So what you're saying is we're going to be playing in St. Louis. San Antonio is going to go to St. Louis to play in St. Louis in Week 10. And if they lose, they have to turn around and play in the playoffs
the next week.
And just be there. It's wild.
Might as well not leave. They might as well find a practice facility somewhere close.
They don't do
Stay
that
in town.
No, the teams, the way that they're still doing it, the teams
are they
practice
still
in Arlington. Yeah, they have a hub city, and then they go to the cities to play the games. So they're all going to go together, which is hilarious. It's wild.
Well, and then you got Michigan at Birmingham, and Birmingham, unless they lose the next 2 weeks, and which would include a loss to Michigan, Birmingham's going to host the playoff game there too.
The same thing.
Yes, the exact same thing. It's like they're going to turn into we're going to tune in to watch Week 10, and then we're going to watch this last game. Week. Like, oh, why are they showing replays? Like, what are we doing here? I didn't know we were going to do reruns for the UFL. Awesome. That's interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to Week 9. Again, nothing really much matters. I guess so. Some of it does matter because you could see some upsets here. Either St. Louis or San Antonio losing, that puts one team above the other, even though it still comes down to Week 10. Let's start off here. Saturday, 12 o'clock kickoff on ABC features the St. Louis Battlehawks at the Arlington Renegades. Again, no betting odds here. I think it's safe to say that St. Louis wins this game pretty handedly, Bill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
not,
we don't have to spend any more time in it. Yeah.
I mean, other than Wilkins being the quarterback, because we're expecting McCarron not to be there, I think that's the only way that this is going to be. I mean, it might be a little closer than we think, but yeah, I think St. Louis is a better team.
Well, here's a game. This is actually, I mean, it has playoff implications because if Birmingham is able to knock off San Antonio, then that puts St. Louis with a win in that number 1 spot. So week 10 sort of, I don't think maybe it does matter. It doesn't, regardless. Birmingham 8-0. They're looking to keep that undefeated record intact as they travel to San Antonio. This game will follow immediately the Battlehawks Arlington game at 3:00 on ABC. Bill, does San Antonio have a chance to knock out Birmingham here?
Yeah. It depends on which Quentin Dormady we get. But yeah, I think this is going to be a fun game, but I still think Birmingham's the better team. I'll take Birmingham on this one, but this is a good game to watch. I think people should pay attention to this one. This is going to be fun.
I think Birmingham needs to lose if they're going to have a shot to win the UFL championship. Give me Arlington in the upset. I'll take it, especially if you keep McFarland on the field. You never know. I mean, Houston almost beat Birmingham last week, so we'll see what happens. The Sunday games are played at the same time. So you're going to see viewership drop this week. The first game that we're going to talk about, DC at Memphis, Sunday 2:30 kickoff on Fox. Give me DC. Bill, what say you?
Yeah, Memphis. We've gone over it. They're just terrible. So DC.
Yeah, bad. Then the other game that plays at 2:30 p.m. on Fox features the Michigan Panthers at the Houston Roughnecks. I should mention that if you have the Fox Sports app on your smart device, on your TV, whatever the case is, I believe they will let you watch both games on the app. And if I'm not mistaken, at least one of them may be in 4K. So although this is going to be regionally broadcast on Fox, if you have the Fox Sports app, you can watch either one of these games that you want to watch. Having said that, Houston is one of the bottom 3 teams in the league. Michigan's in the playoffs. Give me Michigan in this game. Bill, what say you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Michigan.
Yeah, okay.
This is the only playoff team playing on Sunday. So, yeah.
It's hard to talk about the UFL. We've been sort of pining at the at people to be watching the UFL all season. And now we're going into week 9 where the playoffs are already decided. It's sort of hard to hype people up to watch these games because in fairness, the only thing that kind of really matters at this point beyond seeding is to see if Birmingham can run the table and finish the season 12-0.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at the Patriots 17-0 season. We're looking at, can Alabama finish the season, with the college football playoff undefeated, et cetera, et cetera. Bill, we have reached overtime where we talk about kind of whatever we want to talk about the end of the show. Bill, anything you want to bring to the table here before we sign off?
No, I think I'm good.
All right.
I think I'm feeling good.
I'll boast my chest out because Volley Polly called it out early on the show, and I actually talked about it in overtime last week that I was going to try my hand in stand-up comedy last Thursday, and I didn't chicken out. I did it. It was nerve-wracking, but it was fun. I've got a lot of really good notes from people who watched the set. I've got the video not only on my Facebook, my personal Facebook page. I've also got it on YouTube. If you search Ryan Frick Comedy on YouTube, there's exactly one whole video there. Subscribe because I'll be posting more videos there as I get on more stages and get working. But I actually had a comedian over on Instagram critique my set and give me some really good feedback. But overall, the feedback has been positive. A lot of people have watched it as Bill tries to show the camera. Yeah, you can see it right there.
There it is.
I've had a lot of, again, really positive feedback. It's been humbling because it's something that I've always been interested in doing. I know that it wasn't perfect because it was my first time. I know there's room for growth and stuff like that. But the fact that I actually had people in the crowd laughing that were the 6 people that I brought with me. Maybe just reworking some jokes and reorganizing and stuff like that. I could sort of optimize it and do really well. So I do want to thank Bill and his family for everybody who showed up. Shout out to my friend John and his wife Anna for coming out, and Travis. Travis has been here with us on the show from time to time, watching tap outs and touchdowns. They all came out to support me, and I couldn't have felt better on about not only being supported from you guys, but actually seeing people tell me, "Hey, that was really funny." And so for a guy that has always thought about himself being funny, but I don't really know if I'm funny. Let's go see. It was nice. It was fun. They're not doing a show at the Green Comedy Zone this week, but next week there is an open mic at a place, a gym, something or other. I'll post it on social media. There's a place in Spartanburg that does open mics on Monday. I'm going to go there on Monday. And then next week on the Comedy Zone, I'll be going back on an open mic with some new material to try out there. But I wanted to thank everybody who supported me in that attempt, in that sort of the debut of Ryan Frick Comedy. So it was really fun, and that's sort of all I've got for overtime this week. If you want to follow the show, if you're not already doing so, make sure you go over to facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns. Make sure you like and follow there so you can watch shows live with us on Wednesdays. On X at tapouts. It's no longer twitter.com. It is x.com. Do not only put one X. Only put one X because I'm not sure.
Is it really?
Yes.
X. Wow.
X.com.
My wife
yeah.
apparently goes there.
Yeah. So just make sure you don't put 2 or 3 X's on there, because it might take you somewhere else. Just a heads up.
Oh, what's this? No, I was kidding.
Yeah. And then the YouTube channel. We went live on YouTube tonight at Tap Outs and Touchdowns. Make sure you go and subscribe. I think we only have 34 subscribers over on YouTube. So share the YouTube page and get some more people subscribing over on YouTube. And then if you want to follow me on Instagram at Ryan W. Frick. I've been posting a lot there lately. We went live on the show over on Instagram last week. We went back to YouTube this week instead. Make sure you go follow all the handles. And whenever we go, be a part of the show and join the conversation. We only have 2 more weeks of the regular season in the UFL left. They've got playoffs, and I think we're going to take a little bit of a break because it's sort of the dead time in football at that point. I should mention, go listen to Drop the Mic with Michael Davis. I was featured on that show talking about this weekend's WWE King and Queen of the Ring event in Saudi Arabia. So make sure you go check out that, because we had a lot of fun conversation. It was actually really fun. I got heated for the first time in a while. I haven't talked wrestling in a bit, so make sure you go and check that out over Drop the Mic, wherever it is that you find him on all the social media platforms. That's this week. Appreciate everybody who joined in the conversation, joined the comment, watch with us on X or on Facebook. I'm not really sure how to transition that to getting out of the show. So for Banker Bill, it's your guy, Billy Rye, and we'll see you next time right here on Tap Outs and Touchdowns.